Hello, welcome to a brand new Corn Nation Overreaction, and it's the bye week, so this one's not live. We apologize for that, but we're still going to bring you a great show as always. The bye week, it always feels a little, I don't know, I feel a little empty after this past weekend, but let's do quick introductions here. Of course, you all know me, Greg Mahochko, my longtime broadcast buddy, fellow Husker fan, and great friend, Hoss Reuter, and the newest addition to the Corn Nation Overreaction show, and a longtime friend of the Hoss. And, you know, every day is a tacking on to our friendship, but that's every game. Jake, what's going on, Jake?
Same old,
Yes.
Bye week, kind of got to recharge our batteries a little bit halfway through the season. So, yeah, a little bit more clear-headed looking at the midway point since we didn't have a game this week, I think. So
I want to ask you guys about the placement, your opinions on, I mean, like we're half the regular season down. I feel like this is, you wouldn't want the bye week any earlier than the midway point. And if possible, at least in my opinion, if you could have it week 7 or maybe even 8, going so you can finish November strong. But like, Hoss, let's start with you. What's your thoughts or your opinions on just the timing of this bye week?
I think for this bye week, it's a good time to have it. You got 12 games, we're through 6, so it's right at that halfway point. I just don't like years when the calendar falls a certain way that you get 2 bye weeks put into your schedule. So like this year, we have the November 9th bye week. That late in the year, I'm a big believer in if you get hot, you want to stay hot. You just want to keep the momentum rolling. So who knows? Maybe I'll feel differently about that second one. But for now, the first one, I really like it.
Jake, I always feel like the only time maybe you get a second bye week is when you play that 0-week game. For whatever reason, I forgot about that November 9th bye week altogether. So, 2 bye weeks, what are your thoughts on at least the timing of this one?
Well, the timing of both of them, I love the way both of them fall. You get halfway through the season. This kind of it feels like a very natural break for a team to have one after 6 games, and then what do we play? Only 2 more. 2 more. We play 3 more.
Yep.
Indiana, Ohio State,
UCLA.
Then we have one before SC, right?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, again, even the timing of who our opponents are, I think that works out great. So I love the placements of the bye weeks this year.
I feel like it's ramping up. Bye week is at least, all right, let's start with this bye week. We now go to Indiana. Indiana's undefeated. Indiana's ranked. And then to Ohio State. And then you kind of, no offense to the Bruins, but they're not having a great year. So you kind of get, I don't want to say a gimme, certainly not in the Big Ten. I don't think there are any gimmies, but you do have a little bit, you're ramping up, and then you got the downward slope of the roller coaster, and then into a bye week. And then, like you mentioned, you're on the road to USC. Then it is home against Wisconsin, and then finishing out. You're right. You both are absolutely right. The timing of the second one, Hoss, fully agree that if you're rolling, like if you beat Ohio State and UCLA, you don't want to take any break to chop up that momentum. But I do feel like, whatever the next 3 weeks brings, having that November 9th open date, going into the Trojans, the Badgers, the Hawkeyes, and then whatever the postseason looks like for Nebraska, it might be a well-placed respite.
Yeah, I think I would probably feel a little bit different about that second bye week if we had like injury problems. But so far this year, knock on wood, we've stayed pretty healthy. So that's one thing where that second one, I'm like, God, if you're rolling, if you've beat Indiana, and I won't even say beat Ohio State, but just, gone in there, battled your ass off, and then you beat UCLA, like, you really wish you just had another game to keep that momentum going, because I think that we've seen a lot of times over the years with Husker football teams, bye weeks have killed momentum, and we've seen teams come out flat and sluggish out of the bye, especially if they're on the heels of, a couple of big games. So I could just kind of be looking at it through the lens of, what history says. But for the most part, I love November football. I don't want to have any off days in November. That's kind of at the
Yeah, and like we mentioned at the top, this past weekend, yeah, you get to do a few other things around the house maybe, but
I pretty much completely unplugged.
Yeah,
I pretty much took a break from football this weekend. Nebraska on a bye, Kansas City's on a bye. It was kind of nice. I caught some of the Ohio State-Oregon game, but other than that, really didn't watch much ball. Penn State USC, but that was just kind of like for the last 5 minutes or so.
Before we get into the meat of this episode, you mentioned Penn State USC, you mentioned Ohio State Oregon. Those were some key matchups. What were your biggest takeaways about those two games? Jake, we'll start with you.
With Penn State SC?
We'll start there. That's fine.
Well, I think the parity in the Big Ten is really on display, where there's a lot of evenness between all the teams most of the teams in the conference. I think anybody can beat anybody on a given Saturday. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Ohio State and Oregon, Ohio obviously just played, but I don't think kind of those teams at the top are invulnerable either. People are going to point to Wisconsin kind of, with what happened with Rutgers getting boat raced. I think that Rutgers put a lot into the game against us, and I think that it was just a letdown. I don't think you can take a lot from that score. They didn't look themselves Saturday. So, just overall, the parity of the league, of the conference that we play in, Matt Rule's kind of right. Like preseason, he kind of, some SEC fans kind of clowned on him a little bit for comparing the Big Ten to the NFL. This is the NFL of college football. It kind of feels like that. There really aren't any bad teams. Not to pile on UCLA, but they're not even really that. They're not a bad football team. I just don't think that they have the chops to play with some of the big boys in our conference. But I think in another conference, they would be doing okay.
Big 12, yeah.
Big 12 came to mind right away. I think they'd be doing okay in the Big 12. Middle of the pack, maybe Big 12 team, but they're a bottom tier Big 10 team.
Yeah, to piggyback off Jake's comment about parity, in looking over scores and catching some highlights today and a little bit yesterday from what happened in the Big Ten, Rutgers, they put a lot into the Nebraska game, and Wisconsin, they just, for whatever reason, that matchup, they matched up a little bit better than we did. The transitive property in college football doesn't work game to game.
No.
When people try to do we beat them and they beat them, so we're better than them, it's never worked that way. It's just, there's too many differences week to week. But what you're seeing kind of is interesting. So Nebraska beats Purdue. Week later, Purdue and Wisconsin play, and Wisconsin boat races Purdue. And then we beat Rutgers, then Wisconsin boat races Rutgers. Is that a case of Nebraska physically getting after the opponent the week before? And then, like they've told stories about the 90s teams and some of the early 2000s teams, about how those teams that we beat kind of would tend to lose the next week because they were still physically hurting from the week before. Who knows? Again, transitive property, don't always know how that works out. But I think it is encouraging just to see there's a just win mentality through the entire conference. NFL style, like every week somebody can beat you. And I think that we've probably underestimated the Big Ten Conference going back to when we first joined the league 15 years ago, where it was, we're going to step into the conference and we're going to dominate. They're slow. They have, they're not very athletic. You learn pretty quick in this league that everybody's got dudes. And I think USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are learning the hard way. Like Washington got their ass kicked by Iowa and Kinnick, 40-16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And USC, I don't think that they were quite prepared for a little bit of the physicality of Penn State as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where the conference race shakes out as we come down the stretch, the last 6 games of the season. But, on the bright side, in the first year without divisions, Nebraska can be tied with Indiana for third place in the Big Ten Conference with a win this Saturday.
Now, we talk about the post-Nebraska effect and how Purdue and Rutgers went up against Wisconsin and got boat raced. But what do you think about Purdue's bounce-back effort against Illinois this past weekend? They lost by a point, and if I remember correctly, I think that game went to overtime.
50-49. Well, Purdue made some changes. They fired Graham Harrell, and they might be finding a little bit of a groove that's probably a little bit too little too late for Ryan Walters. But, any given Saturday. I mean, we don't need to do any Al Pacino impersonations on this podcast.
Not this time.
Back in the summer, but any given Saturday, man.
Well, it is encouraging. I'm still, riding high on the fact that halfway through the season, Nebraska's 5-1, which is what we're going to talk about. We're going to spend this episode doing our first half, our mid-season report card. And Haas, I'm so glad that I reached out to you this morning just to make sure I understood the format. And then coming in, I'm like, guys, I'm going to shoot from the hip because I've got some stats. I've got some things lined up. I'm not the least bit surprised that you have notes. I wouldn't be surprised if Jake has some notes too. So
all you gotta do is tee it up for us.
Quite a few, just so that I have just some things to point to support reasonings. But yeah.
So I'll leave it to you guys. Where do you want to start? You want to start offensive side or defensive side of the ball?
Let's start offense with quarterback.
Quarterback's kind of the natural progression.
Yeah.
Haas, I'm sure great. We probably all have the same order that we're going to want to grade these positions.
Yeah, let me guess. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, O-line.
You got it.
Yeah.
See, I was going to start with the most important.
DBs.
I was going to start with the most important position group being the offensive line, but that's all right.
We can start wherever, but
no.
Most amount of notes, but let's start with quarterback because
let us start with
probably riot. Minnie would probably riot if we didn't start with it.
You know what? Oddly enough, I did get a message from her this morning. Like, where's the overreaction? What happened? And I was like, we had a scheduling hiccup. It's all good. We're gonna knock out the show on a Monday night and get it out there for YouTube members. So again, if you were watching this ahead of Wednesday at 6:00, then that's because you're a YouTube member. We appreciate your membership, and tell the other people so that they can have access to some of this content early as well. So
you're getting paid for that, Greg.
I'm not. John has yet to cut me in on a super chat or anything. So I really got to talk to management about my situation here. But
we're gonna unionize.
That's right. Well, let's talk about the fact that we have had 4 Nebraska Cornhuskers complete passes this season through 6 games. Going all the way back to the UTEP game in Jalen Grahamstead, the most recent game here, Rutgers, and the fake punt with Brian Buschini, Heinrich Harburg, and then, of course, doing the workload.
Who would have saw Heinrich Harburg 8 of 8 for the year?
Yeah, I'm telling you, underrated.
Yeah.
Has the highest efficiency rate and the second total yards. But, of course, the main man's going to be DR, the true freshman Dylan Raiola. 113 of 169, 3 interceptions, 9 touchdowns, averaging 226.3 yards per game, and that's good for 1,358 yards through 6. And I think it's important to note that you look at Northern Iowa, you look at UTEP, if I remember correctly, Purdue, even parts of the Colorado game, like Dylan hasn't played a ton of full games. Like, his stats could look much better. But Jake, we'll start with you. Where are you rating, I guess, the entire quarterback position?
I went with just a solid A for this one. I kind of went between B+, A-, and after really giving it a lot of thought, I went with an A. He's completing 2/3 of his passes. And those 9 touchdowns and 3 picks, that realistically could be, and of course, butterfly effect, everything changes after certain things happen. But just looking at it at a surface level, his stat line could be 10 or 11 touchdowns and 1 pick because 2 of those interceptions was our receivers getting the ball yanked away on 50-50 balls. So if you were talking about a true – and I should mention, I'm leaving out that he's even a true freshman. I'm considering his body of work for what it is, no matter what I'm not grading on a curve. I think he's really been an A, the quarterback room as a whole, but obviously 99% of the production has been from one player. I mean, basically 1,400 yards halfway through the season, which I think is right on pace. I think my preseason was 2,800. I'm pretty sure, could be wrong, but and like I said, if his stat line was 10 touchdowns, 1 interception right now, I think that we're going to be. I mean, that's a 10-to-1 ratio, boys. You don't think you get too much better than that at any level. So maybe high school where he was 34-1 as a senior, touchdowns to picks. But Dylan Raiola is a star. He's taken on the role of a leader as a true freshman, and according to the word come from the other guys, he's not a corny, cheesy leader. He's an actual leader. To me, and the mistakes he's making aren't even freshman mistakes. They're mistakes anybody would make. You see guys even like Dylan Gabriel making mistakes like Dylan makes. So it's not like Dylan is making dumb, boneheaded freshman inexperienced errors.
Or like Will Howard's complete lack of
awareness.
Field awareness.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going to go.
Greg, Hassan, we watched the end of that game together, and we both were expecting when Will went down to immediately call. He didn't even do it. He just it was really weird. I'm not trashing Will Howard because I do think he's a pretty good signal caller and a good quarterback in his own right. But that was a boneheaded mistake. Yep.
That's not something you expect from a guy that's probably a 4th or 5th year senior.
22 or 23-year-old. So anyway, yeah, all in all, I'm giving the quarterback position an A.
I will, in regards to Will Howard, when that play happened to end that Ohio State-Oregon game, I took to the official 5 Heart Podcast X account, which is the number 5 Heart Podcast, and I said, I'm not big on Schadenfreude, but I'm so glad we have Dylan and not Will.
Yep. We said the same thing.
We did.
Yep.
Haas, where are you at on the quarterback room, quarterback position as a whole?
I graded it a little bit differently, more looking at just the production side of things. The production side of things, and what kind of guided my thinking was conversations we had a year ago at this time about, God, if we just had average to above average quarterback play, we'd be in good shape. And we are getting average to above average quarterback play. And that's not a slight on Dylan or saying that he's not talented. It's just the numbers are average to above average because that's how we're winning games. You know, we're taking care of the football. We're not shooting ourselves in the foot and stumbling all over ourselves. We're playing smart football. So I graded him at a B-. You know, that is where I had him at. And, you know, so it's the average to above average quarterback play that we all desperately craved last year. And then the good is he eliminates turnovers, rarely makes mistakes. As Jake pointed out, 2 of those interceptions are on 50-50 balls that the receiver, you know, just didn't finish the play. You know, so I'm not going to put those on the quarterback. It's kind of like that should be a separate stat entirely that get like an error gets assessed to the receiver or something like that. From the bad, sometimes tries to force the deep ball when he just needs to scramble or just check it down real quick. You know, I'll use an example on something good that happens, so it's not just, you know, like the butterfly opens up to the butterfly effect, or, you know, you're just pointing out because it was an incompletion, what some people might say. That deep crossing route to Ja'Cory Barney on our first or second drive against Rutgers, he had Nate Borkacher wide open on a square in on the opposite side of the field. Most times it'd be, hey, just take the 12 yards, get a fresh set of downs. He waited, and he was able to fit in a back shoulder throw to Barney on the deep crossing route, but that's not always going to be there. So, like, I have a tendency to grade quarterbacks more on did you take the routine play that is there? So, and maybe that's years of PTSD from having quarterbacks that just, you know, tried to risk it too much. But regardless, that's my thinking on that one.
This is the fun part of going last, is that I get to summarize and agree with both of you. Quarterback play this year has not been a detriment like it has in years past. when we're avoiding the clear and obvious mistakes, when we're taking care of the ball. Like part of me really wants to give the quarterback position an A, but I also understand, the growth that I feel like if we're, I don't want to put an A right now because I don't want there to be such a short ceiling for quarterback play. So I'm going to go with a B. I feel like, there's room for growth, but
That's where I'm at as well. Just a solid blue collar B.
And some of the intangibles, the on the field is great. The touch passes. Although I know we talked last week, like he's got the type of arm that he could sling it in there if he needed to. But we saw this again going back to week 1 against UTEP. Floating a pass. I think it was Jamal Banks or to Jamal Banks, and beyond the reach of the defender, right into the receiver's hands. But it's some of the less obvious. You talk about his leadership and the fact that as a true freshman he has stepped up and he I guess it makes sense for your starting quarterback to be the first one out the tunnel. But he's cemented himself as a guy that older players are looking to. He has he's made it his job to know exactly where everybody is supposed to be. So yeah, I would like some more of the checkdowns or throwing the ball away. I'd like to see less sacks and less high risk, low percentage downfield attempts. But I'm also not going to fault the guy for wanting to go big. So again, I got a solid B, and we know that there's a pretty high ceiling for this kid.
And that brings up, just kind of I want to say the discrepancy, because I don't think we're far off in how we're approaching, how Dylan's playing, because we're all saying, he's playing smart quarterback play. He's operating in the position well. But it brings up a good point about grading. What the staff is asking him to do, that's kind of where the curve is. Because, if you're going to grade him on a curve, it's like, well, the staff's not asking him to do a bunch of crazy shit, drop back there 40, 50 times a game with empty sets, adjusting protections as we go. We'll just ask him to manage the game. So that's kind of where, I'd probably bump that B- up to, B+, A-.
That's what I think that's what I was going to kind of go off that, which that's a really good point, is maybe my grade seems high, which it is, but it also is in the context of what he's been asked to do. And I think that what he's been asked to do is worthy of at least a B+ grade. Somewhere I'm probably giving him a little bit much on the credit, but B+, A- I think is fair. I'm going to stick with an A because I'm a little bit more emotional. And looking at it from an emotional standpoint, he earned an A this first half of the season in my eyes.
Let me ask you this, because I feel, and this is as rhetorical as it's going to get, but as he improves, progresses, evolves as a quarterback at the University of Nebraska, I imagine that the coaches are going to want him or expect him to do more. Like right now, yes, he's game managing, and I don't want to put in unfair.
That term should not be a pejorative, because game managers win games.
Right. But I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I'm not making a comparison, but Tom Brady was a game manager. He didn't
right out of my
be the
mouth.
Biggest definition of one. Because
no,
right.
He made mistakes.
100.
So, and again, I'm comparing two different types of. Ben Roethlisberger was not a game manager. No. Ben Roethlisberger was a different type of quarterback, who I wish was as successful as Tom Brady.
I'll take it a little bit more, local, a little bit more close into the number 15. He's playing a lot like how Kansas City's asking Mahomes to play in Kansas City right now.
Which is don't
turn the football over, utilize the run game, utilize, elements of the passing game as an extension of the run. They grind people down with their defense. They stop the run. He puts them into position on offense to win games.
Yeah. Basically, you have game managers and you have gunslingers.
And anymore, I'd rather just take a game manager.
Both can win, but I mean, if you were to put these guys, last thing before we move on is I just want you make a point with Tom Brady, which Greg, that's exactly what I was thinking for about 40 seconds before you said it.
Breaks my heart.
If you were to put Brett Favre and Tom Brady both in their prime, say whatever, 27, 28 years old, and you just put them in t-shirt and shorts and have them throw the ball, you would have thought Brett Favre was 10 times more impressive. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady has 8 times as many Super Bowl rings?
Mm-hmm.
And Favre had some, and I'm a big Brett Favre fan, by the way. Maybe not everything he's done in his personal life, not necessarily, but on the field. And I mean, he had good teams around him, and he threw the ball away, literally threw it away in playoff games. He came up small in some big spots, and Tom Brady never did. But anyway, this isn't a show about that. So
no. So we got a consensus high B, low A grade there for the quarterbacks. So let's move on to running backs, and this is I think maybe because there's been so many. I guess just for convenience, we have to kind of narrow it down to Dowdell, Johnson & Johnson, and Irvin Jr. because there have been a lot of players who have carried the rock for Nebraska.
Kind of grade on who's made the difference in crunch time,
okay.
Actual game rep environments, not, garbage time like UTEP. I have running back as a C. I like the way Dowdell runs with physicality. I think Emmett Johnson's our most complete back. But all in all, this group is very average. Average talent, average rushing yields. Really, a lot of it just goes back to we need a home run hitter. The rotation has been a bit illogical at times and inconsistent. The hot hand from one game is not the hot hand in the next. We never let the running backs get into a lather. We never let them get into a rhythm and really see what they can do well. So this is definitely one that I feel pretty strongly on as just a C. I'm just not feeling real good about this position group being able to take over games at any point.
Jake?
We are in agreement. That is a C. I didn't grade the individual backs. I just the room as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Dowdell, leading rusher right now, 74 carries, 334 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, which is pretty pedestrian, and 5 touchdowns. Emmett Johnson's averaging almost 6 yards a carry, 1 touchdown, about half the carries, 35 yards. I didn't look at Gabe Ervin. If I had to guess, he's somewhere between like 2.7 and 3.2 yards per carry. That
sounds about right.
If 3.1 actually.
There we go.
So 12 carries, 37 yards.
That's So, part of I think there's been some weak run blocking outside of the red zone, which we'll touch more on when we get to offensive line play, and that can be part of it, but really good, great difference-making running backs, they still make things happen sometimes. When you'll see some of your better running backs in the country year after year, you'll see plays where the offensive line gets no push and they find a hole and they break a 20-plus yarder. We don't have anybody right now that does that consistently. Emmett and Ramir can. Gabe Ervin hasn't really shown much this year. He's definitely shown that he's strong and physical. Dowdell, a little bit more balanced of a back, but doesn't show any breakaway speed. So solid C. I don't feel great about that room right now, but I do think there's a lot of talent in that room. I think there's a lot of room for improvement.
100% agree. And I know it's, I think in the press conference earlier today, maybe, as we recorded this on Monday night, that Matt Rule said, we haven't had anybody really break a big gain, you look at the longest. I mean, we've had, Emmett Johnson had a 42-yarder. What's that?
I was just going to say longest runs by Emmett Johnson.
Yeah. And Dante, he's got a 38-yarder. For the purposes of this, I've not included Ja'Cory Barney Jr., but he is our, as far as yardage, he's our 4th best, after Johnson and Dowdell. And then upward. So I've got this group as a C. Jake, like you said, there's a lot of talent there, and I'm not saying that they're being misutilized or anything like that. It's just when you're running back by committee, nobody has a chance to stand out. And I did the math. When you take Dowdell, Johnson, and Gabe Ervin Jr., which are, again, the exception with the exclusion of Ja'Cory Barney, those are our 4 leading rushers, 725 yards. Like, unless something drastic happens from a strategic or schematic philosophy extent, we're not going to have anybody sniffing anywhere near 1,000 yards, and that's a shame because we got some guys who could, if they were going to be relied on as the every down, every game back.
Well, yeah, we're 90th in the country right now at rushing at 136.5 per game, and we all knew we were going to take a step back when you're not utilizing a mobile quarterback. But these numbers, I think pedestrian would even be a little bit of a kind word to describe the rushing game right now, and that's my biggest concern as we get into the meat of our schedule. The lack of consistency, the inability to really generate push in the red zone or push in the running game outside of the red zone. And then all in all, I just think that there needs to be more consistency with who gets the hot hand, who gets, the carries, because I think that they're doing this, that room a disservice with how they just shuffle guys around so much.
And I'll say this, if you flip the calendar back 40 or more years, you'd be very happy with a team that was averaging 3.9 yards per rush, because it was always the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But the game has evolved so much.
Maybe in the NFL, not in the college game. That would have been low even 40 years ago in the college game.
Well, maybe I'm going more anyway. But okay. The game.
All right, Woody, let's calm down.
The game has evolved so much that is not going to get it done. So what is the solution for the second half? I don't know. We've been talking on this show about more Emmett Johnson, getting him 20 plus carries a game. But that is definitely, the coaching staff seems to be hesitant to make any of those drastic maneuvers. So in the meantime, we'll have, I guess we're 90th in the country. We're below average rushing production at the time. So, which takes us to the wide receiver room. And similarly, there are a lot of bodies in the wide receiver room, and they are all contributing in a variety of, what's what I'm looking for, capacities or levels of success.
Jake, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I'll take it. I gave the receiver performance so far a C.
Okay.
Flat C. I believe leading receiver as far as receptions is Jamal Banks with 21. Yardage would be Naor. He has 17 receptions, but 291 yards. Banks 283. The surprising one that I was sleeping on was Jalen Lloyd. I didn't realize he actually has 181 yards receiving with over 30 yards per reception, 30.2.
Damn.
6 receptions.
Yeah, but a good third of that comes from 159-yard reception.
That's true. That is true. And Ja'Cory Barney, 19 receptions, 149 yards. Again, but he's so dynamic that a lot of his production also comes from the running game. So, and his rushing ability. I did go all the way down to Carter Nelson, 8 receptions, 75 yards, 9.4 per reception with 1 touchdown. Basically, I'm just echoing what I said with the running backs. I pretty much can just copy and paste everything I said about running backs here. On receiving alone, I could maybe justify up to a B-, but especially early in the season, the run blocking was so poor and the lazy route running was so evident that I really couldn't give them anything more than a C justifiably in my mind, because it's not just about catching the ball. There's a lot of other factors. Yeah. So I'm giving them a C. A C as a unit. Again, though, a lot of talent. in that room and a lot of young guys. I think Banks and Ayor have been okay. I think they could be doing a lot better.
I agree. I have them at a B-, and my comments were still waiting on this unit to really turn on the burners and take over a game. I think that we saw, starting with that Northern Iowa game, there was, some times that they really struggled to get open, and that's pretty troublesome to see against an FCS team. It's also, I don't know if we have a whole lot of speed that we thought we did at this position outside of Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney. Banks and Nair really struggle to get separation. And when those two are your outside receivers, teams are really able to kind of put a lid on you and play too high coverage against you and just really sell out, to keep everything in front. And when pairing that with our lack of creative, I don't want to use the word creative, but lack of diverse run schemes, I think it really makes us look like, if anyone wants to go back and look at them, the 2021 Kansas City Chiefs when they started 3-4 and the offense was kind of, really kept under wraps for long stretches of that season before they figured it out late. This is what this offense kind of reminds me of right now. The speed at receiver is not able to stretch the field vertically. The running game is getting shut down because we don't have the execution up front. I don't mean to go off on a tangent because this is about receivers. I'm just kind of talking about how it all ties in together. Bright spots at receiver, Ja'Cory Barney, obviously, as a freshman. There's moments that Banks is a really nice big body target in the red zone. I just wish we could kind of see him take over a game like he did at Clemson, or not at Clemson, for Wake Forest against Clemson a couple years back. So sorry to kind of ramble and be a little incoherent there with all the different weaving together, but yeah, solid B. Blocking's gotten a little bit better in past few games, which would make sense when you have Ron Brown on staff. A guy might teach receiver blocking better than just about anyone else in the country. I still would like to see from some of these receivers just getting open, getting in and out of their breaks really quickly. Because as Jake pointed out, some of the lazy route running that we saw earlier this season was still kind of prevalent against Rutgers as well.
I'm going to piggyback off of again what you both said. Again, the going last advantage here. I'm going to give the group a C, and I could be a little nicer, but I could also be a little harsher to them. But the reason I'm not harsher to them is because some of it is out of their control. So when we get to like the coaching grades, I might like, would I like to see Jalen Lloyd in there more and having a bigger impact? I think he's certainly capable. The numbers showed, again, 6 receptions for 180 yards, but either he's not being targeted or he's not even on the field to make that impact. And those are not, he's not to blame for that. When you talk about Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks, you got a lot of nil money wrapped up in two guys who, yeah, they're top of the stats, but I think as Husker fans, we expected more. We expect
take over games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you got one, you got one from Texas. And again, not to be overly critical. I mean, there have been times when Isaiah Nayor has looked really fantastic, but I believe he's also responsible for that 50-50 ball in the end zone against Illinois that got ripped away. And you say what you want. The call on the field, I don't want to go back and relitigate this. The call on the field was a touchdown. So it's either a touchdown or an incomplete pass. They come back and rule it an interception, whatever. And then Jalen Lloyd being the other 50-50 ball that kind of caught on his hip and got taken away. So, but it's a young up and coming group. I think we throw, correct me if I'm wrong, we're throwing tight ends in this position as well.
I am separate.
I'm separate.
All right, hold on. Let me make that, jot that down. So, all right. So when you take out that element of it, I really, again, am impressed, just like you guys, and just like any Husker fan, with Ja'Cory Barney Jr., especially because I didn't know what to expect I didn't realize he was going to be a flashy day one impact and playmaker. But for the big two, the other big two offseason acquisitions, for lack of a better term, and maybe again this is the detriment of having two big targets, is that you've got to kind of split the touches, so neither one of them's really standing out. I feel like it's a little bit like the running back room again. You like to think that we have a wealth of options, and I think we're seeing that can be a detriment because no one guy is really able to get into a game takeover rhythm, because we got to make sure we're hitting all the targets. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the best way to articulate it, but all in all, I give the wide receivers a C.
Okay.
Which brings us to tight ends, which, again, I have to squeeze room. I'm actually keeping track of all of our grades for what it's worth. I'm gonna try to do it.
I'd love by the end of the season to compare these grades to final grades.
Mid-year. Okay. All right. Not that
I've got tight end at C+.
Okay.
And I think consistency and just overall youth prevent this grade from being higher. Fidone drops too many passes, too many routine catches. There's some that have been contested, and it's like, okay, he's got a defender right there as he's trying to catch the ball, but there's still some lapses in concentration from Fidone. Everybody else just kind of sort of does everything at an okay level at this position. Borkature, I think he probably needs more intermediate opportunities in the passing game. I think Fidone, probably more red zone targets would be, the way to utilize him. And Nelson needs to be the screen RPO guy. It doesn't need to be Fidone trying to change directions behind the line of scrimmage or get behind blockers. So I would just say C+ from those guys. Nothing against their ability. I do think Fidone has improved as, over the past month since he's kind of been a topic on this show. I would just say C+ and consistency. Really, that just need to see better consistency out of that position.
Yep, C+. We're in agreement again. My reason more so is just lack of production. Honestly, it was kind of like the same reasoning, Haas, you had for the quarterback position being a B. Mm-hmm. The numbers just aren't there. And to be fair, I don't think it's their fault. Don't want to just talk about misutilization right now, but Fidone, I think, is being a little bit this is kind of a hot take, but being misused quite a bit. I think that him over the middle with his skill set, his physique, how strong he is, I think he'd be much better utilized that way instead of trying to run flat routes toward the sideline. Now, Nelson, I included in wide receiver just because I think that he's officially listed that on the depth chart. He's kind of a hybrid player. But I agree with Haas. He should be kind of that RPO tight end screen type tight end. I do think that they've been really well in run blocking.
Yes. They've done a great job setting the edge.
Fidone especially has improved greatly. He's not getting turned as much as he did last year and even early this season. He's staying more square and handling his matchups really well. Borkature's always been a good blocker. Again, I don't think that it's really any fault of these guys aside from Fidone kind of having some drops, but I think that they're just not really being schemed in that well. So anyway, yeah, C+ for me on the tight end position.
I'm going to go. I think, Jake, what you said at the end kind of changed my opinion because I was thinking C, but I want to go B, largely because you said they're not being schemed in real well. And because, I can't fault them. I can't fault them. Obviously, yeah, we can fault Thomas Fidone for dropping passes, but we can't fault Nate Borkature for not seeing the field more or not having the ball thrown his direction. He's got one catch for 25 yards. That's not a bad average. Jan Bonner has 5 catches for 32. And Fidone, 14 for 127. Could be more, obviously from what we've seen with the hands, could be a little less. But I think that, I'm giving them just a B. What they've provided in the run blocking game, I think makes up for their lack of, passing or receptions and productivity there. So they have provided a really strong presence, like you guys both said, in the run game. So I'm going to give them just a little bit of benefit of the doubt, and I'm bumping them up to a B. So I can't, kind of like, the wide receivers and Jalen Lloyd, like I can't fault Jalen Lloyd for not having the ball thrown in his direction. That's a coaching thing. We'll get to that later in the show.
Okay.
Now let's talk about those big boys up front. Offensive line, Haas, I'm going to let you start. I'm going to let you go because I know you have a lot of thoughts when it comes to the offensive line.
I do. And I've got them graded a B-, actually. And I think, and that's kind of grading on a curve. They're missing 2 preseason starters, or technically 3 if you want to count Mazuka not being in the lineup since the Colorado game. And yet we're tied 72nd in the country. I didn't know quite how to word this, so just bear with me. We've only given up 12 sacks for the year. So it's 72nd in the country. That's the same as Alabama, even with Caden Proctor at left tackle and Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Ben Scott's been a model of consistency during his time in Lincoln at the center position, which has been historically a position that's been pretty volatile over probably the past 15 years of Husker football. When you look at some of the issues we've had with guys like Dylan Utter, who weren't just quite cut out for the position, or Cameron Jurgens, his issues with snapping before he got it figured out, or just for a while there, Pelini used the center position as a way to get walk-ons and, low-rated guys on the field that probably shouldn't have been there. So that stability has been great. We're 90th in the country in rushing at 136.5 yards per game, as I mentioned earlier. I will say the offensive line has been hampered a bit by the lack of a quarterback run game, and they've really been hampered by an overwhelmingly austere run game design. As I've talked about earlier, when you really only run about 3 different kinds of run plays, that's really about 3 different kinds of blocks that defenders have to beat, every time you run the ball: a base block, a reach block, or a down block. And so with that, if you're dynamic, if you got the 2012 Alabama offensive line, you're able to run people off the line of scrimmage and, displace them downfield. But when you're not that talented, these guys need a little bit of help. And so I have them at a B-. I think that the play calling's not in the running game's not doing them the most favors. I think there's also a case of they're achieving right at where in line I think their talent level is. I think they are being maximized for what Donovan Raiola has to work with, for the players that are out there. I think they're being maximized, even though the numbers might not be the greatest things, to look at.
Awesome point. Yeah. I have them at a solid B, so I'm right in line there with Haas, just a little bit more rosy, I guess. Again, just real quick, kind of running through left tackle. Cork was playing okay before the injury. Gatula stepped in and has been very steady and solid. Justin Evans and Ben Scott both are kind of the epitome of solid and steady. One thing to point out with Ben Scott as well is he's making all those calls. I know they're simple calls and they're simple reads, but we haven't been having a lot of miscues on that offensive line. Like, we're executing the scheme. We're just not really blowing anybody off the ball. So Ben Scott has a lot of that kind of the game within the game that I think Husker fans, we've kind of taken for granted the last couple seasons, because in the past there's been miscues with missed calls by our centers. Mazuka, he was making a big impact in the run game early on. I know Matt Rule said he's a backup.
I think he started against Rutgers.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
He came in as a tight end in the goal line package on 4th and goal when Dowdle punched it in.
He was a starter. I know Matt Rule said he's not. He's a backup, but he was making a big impact in the run game. At guard, Lutovsky didn't look great when he first came in, but man, he looked
game
good.
over game.
And man, he looks athletic and quick and fast. And yeah, I'm pretty impressive with him. Excited to see what he's going to do moving forward. And Bryce Benhart at right tackle. I mean, that guy gets dragged. He has the most starts of any Nebraska. Is it any Cornhusker ever, or is it just offensive ever? Right?
Yep.
Is he the best offensive lineman we ever had? No. Is he as bad as a lot of fans will make it sound? No, absolutely not. He's a solid, good player.
He's got a future in the NFL.
He does. And, if he would have came in as a not ESPN top 150 or top 100, would we maybe be looking at him differently? Probably. Mm-hmm. But he's a pretty good player. For the life of me, I don't understand why that guy gets just toasted the way he does. But go ahead, Greg.
No, I want to piggyback because go back 2 years ago in, the Frost, Mickey Joseph year where Haas, you and I were like, Donovan Raiola's got to go, and what and we thought he could take Bryce Benhart with him,
I think a lot of that speaks to a good friend of the show, Mark Whipple.
I was like, where are you going with that good friend of the show stuff?
Yeah. Well, no offense to Whip, but he's no friend of mine.
No. Oh, God. I've defended every offensive coordinator we've ever had here, but Greg can tell you, I never defended a single thing he did here.
And you never will.
That was an underwhelming hire at the time. I didn't like that Pitt offense that he had with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. I just thought, I was like, yeah, Jordan, it's good because Jordan Addison's good. And Kenny Pickett was like, what, a sixth-year senior at that point, playing college football. But I was going to make a point based on what Jake said about the offensive line, about Micah Mazuka. Rule saying he's a backup right now. That run game looked really – I'm not going to say it looked like explosive and we were just churning out yards left and right against UTEP and Colorado, but that running game really – was moving the ball early against Colorado in that first half with Dowdle when he ran over Shiloh Sanders. And then also we were really generating some push against UTEP. That Northern Iowa game, that first game that Mazuka was out for, you started to see the run game kind of grind down a little bit, start to kind of, is very halting in its approach. And so I think that we're going to see Mazuka be a starter again at some point this season. I think he means too much to this offense, to our ability to run the football and therefore win football games in the months of October and November. If he's square with the house, so to speak, if he's done all he needs to do to get back in the coaches and his teammates' good graces, then, by all means, put him back in there.
Take the training wheels off or the governor, whatever, let him loose. That's what I'm trying to say. I think for the offensive line, both of you guys are right on. I can't really pick between B or B minus. I mean, I guess I have to. So I can't go. What is between B and B minus? I'm just gonna go B. And I don't really have much more to add. We talked to the Ben Scott, Justin Evans duo. I'm really impressed with how Gunnar Gatula has stepped in, and the right guard. Lutovsky's serviceable and has, I think, a high ceiling. We get Micah Mazuka back in right, like you said, both of you guys. There's definitely room for improvement up front. But again, I'm not going to fault him too much. We're playing with essentially a third string left tackle and a backup right guard. So the guys who you expect to be out there performing well are doing their job, and you're getting a few surprises along the way. So
the other thing I want to mention too, Gatula, when you mentioned that Ben Scott has rarely made a mistake in communication, making the line calls, Jake, the only really missed assignments I've seen from this offensive line all year were in that Illinois game in overtime when they didn't know how to pass off the tech stunt.
Yep.
That was, and it's totally understandable. You got a third string left tackle working with the first string left guard. They've probably never worked on that in practice before.
And that's a note I had too. I'm trying to keep it somewhat short. I don't want the show to be too long. But I agree. Yeah, Haas, Hunter. I had that. Illinois late in the game and especially in overtime is really the only time we saw major miscues. And even then, last thing I'll say on it, with the offensive line, pass protection has been really, really good.
Yes.
Most of these sacks, they do fall on Dylan.
Yep.
And Dylan would admit that. I'm holding on to the ball too long. I guarantee Dylan would say this, hey, I need to be better not holding on the ball as long as I am. And I think that's the reality of that.
I want to piggyback on that because Nebraska has allowed 12 sacks for 102 yards. And you think of that overtime against Illinois, you're looking at 30 yards in sacks right there, I think. It was not a good overtime. Can't call it period or quarter, but session. It was not a great overtime for the Huskers. So
back-to-back sacks in that overtime too to end the game.
Right.
It might have been back-to-back, but it was 2 on that drive. I mean, out of 12, that's a pretty significant chunk of sacks, just from that alone.
And when you start at the 25 and you end up damn near midfield, I mean, that's 20% of your sack yardage. So, yeah, again, I'm not. The good news is when you're 5-1 and when you're rebuilding a program, every position group has room for improvement. And the other good news is I don't think we're beating up any of these guys too much. We're giving the old insult sandwich. There's something nice we say, little critique. We're capping off something nice, and with that, we're going to move.
Facts don't care about feelings, boys.
Oh,
as much as I love all these guys that strap it up for us, I say it every week. Facts are facts, and honestly, most of these guys I think aren't even playing up to their level. It's not like I don't say anybody sucks. I just think you can do better.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at too. I think
shown a lot of flashes, but anyway, sorry, Greg.
There's so good for improvement still. I still feel like we haven't played a complete game this year.
I agree.
So when we get into offense as a whole.
Yep.
Well,
let's move to defensive line.
All right.
We're only an hour into the show. So
yeah. All right. You want me to start this one?
Yeah.
So I have D tackle and D end, as separate grades, but D tackle, I have A-, and like D end edge, I have B+. Ty and Nash, defensive, are the guys I highlighted defensive tackle. Even when they're not showing up on the stat sheet, they're incredibly disruptive and both awesome players. DN/edge, MJ Sherman, Butler, Princewell, James Williams, Cam Lenhart. None of the guys have really, stood out on the season as a whole as being the superstars. James Williams last game kind of sort of started to emerge, but it's a small body of work. Are looking really, really good. I think the only thing we could be getting to the quarterback a little bit more than we are, which is why I just downgrade a bit. But I guess splitting the difference, A-, B+. I guess I'll go B+. The defensive line as a whole, with kind of, I guess, the interior defensive line sort of pulling that grade up a bit. So, yeah.
Okay. I graded the D-line just as a whole, and because they're the strength of the defense. I mean, there's no denying that this defense goes as they go. They had an off game against Illinois, and that was the game that we gave up the most yards and lost. So I'm going to read off some stats first to kind of back up my rationale for this grade. 20 sacks, 0 rushing touchdowns allowed. The only defense in the country to not give up a rushing touchdown. And we've only had 13 red zone attempts by opponents. 35% third down completion rate. We've only given up 16 first downs per game on average. 188 passing yards per game for 6 per attempt and 10 per completion. And we're only giving up 11.3 points per game. For context, the 09 defense gave up 10.4 points per game.
20 sacks, Haas?
Yep, 20 sacks.
20 sacks for 122 yards.
Maybe I need to walk back my comment about getting to the quarterback. I've slept on that stat. That's my bad.
Well, I've got them at an A-. They'd be an A+ if not for the Illinois game. We talked at the Illinois game. Nash was nowhere to be found in that game. Ty Robinson, was overrunning plays or having trouble splitting double teams. Jamari Butler was on the milk carton for that game as well. So I so badly wanted to give them an A+, but with that game, I'm like, that kind of not shattered, but I think it put a pretty good dent in people's confidence in that unit for at least a week or two,
Yeah, Haas, one more time. I didn't write it down when you said it. Your letter grade for offense or defensive line as a whole?
A-.
Solid. A-. Sorry. Well, I'm going to, because I have a bad memory, and for a lot of the things that you just said, as far as the statistics, 20 sacks for 122 yards, having not given up a rushing touchdown this year. I have the defensive line just as a solid A. Like you said, strength of the defense. When they get to the quarterback, or whether it's the one of the 20 sacks, or the quarterback hurry, quarterback hit. It's this is where Jake, like you, get to the emotional side of things. I love seeing Ty Robinson go and throw the bones after. I've loved watching James Williams continue to improve and evolve, and there you go. I give the defensive line just a good old solid A. They're a lot of fun to watch. And when you talk about those guys in the middle, Robinson and Hutmacher, those are going to be guys that, man. I mean, thank God we got Van Poppel, who's seeing Poppleton, who's seeing some main time. I mean, I think we talked last week about how at various points of the Rutgers game you had all three of those guys playing at the same time. But those guys, Ty and Nash, are going to be missed after this year. But I've got that position group as a solid A.
Yeah, I think the production will be replaced with Van Poppel, Princewell, and Cam. Because I think Princewell and Lenhart are both about the same right now. They're kind of playing at about the same level, and I think they're only going to get better.
And another year, James Williams developing. I think you'll eventually see probably Willis McGahee IV really be a hand-in-the-dirt guy.
Oh, you're saying he's going to convert. I was going to say, Haas, you're getting ahead of yourself. When you talk about linebackers.
No, well, I was going to say when you were like 20 sacks. When I saw that stat today, I was like, 20 sacks. I started thinking about what that means. You're 6 games in, so that's just a shade under, a little shade over 3 sacks per game, really. And so I started thinking about the 05 Nebraska defense, 54 sacks on the year. And it's like, that was a damn good pass rush, damn good defensive line. Struggled to stop the run in Adrian Peterson that year. But 54 sacks is a shit ton of
Everybody struggled to slow down Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
I was going to say, just if I could, guys, I think I put this up last week. I'd like to throw it up here again. I shared, last week we had 43 FBS defenses have forced 8+ turnovers this year. 16 FBS defenses have recorded 15+ sacks this year. And 11 FBS defenses are allowing less than 14 points per game this year, but only one is doing all 3, and that's Nebraska. Now, obviously, this was last year. Other teams have played a game since then. Maybe that affects the statistics a little bit, but
we're still 7th in the country in total defense.
Yeah.
Yep.
10 turnovers, 20 sacks, and holding holding opposing offenses to 11.3 points per game. It's what Tony White, and that's the whole crux of this image, is pay Tony White double. What he has done, and as we move on to linebackers, cornerbacks, etc. But it starts. I love calling them the big nasties, but it starts with the guys up front who are setting the tone, and they're maybe Ty and Nash aren't getting all the contact on the quarterback, but they are swallowing up offensive bodies and allowing other guys to get free.
One of the comments about pay Tony White double. Dave Aranda, when he was at LSU, was making like $2.5 million a year as the defensive coordinator. I think White's making about 1.3, I think is what the raise that he got last year was. Honestly, I know he probably wants to be a head coach somewhere, and I think that he should get a very good head coaching job this year after this season. It's going to be a lot better than the jobs that he interviewed for last year with San Diego State and UCLA. But on the off chance that we can keep him or talk him into staying, pay the guy $3 million a year.
Yeah.
He's the best defensive coordinator in the country. What he has to work with, what he had to work with last year with guys who obviously were talented, but guys who had never really been coached properly, and they kind of had to rebuild these guys psychologically as well as physically to get them ready to play in the 3-3-5. I mean, when else have we had a coordinator step in year one and do that? Most times we hire coordinators and it's, oh yeah, year one sucks. Just wait for year two. We love year two around here. We're we're the Chicago Cubs of college football. It's always next year. But White stepped in, and immediately last year we saw against Minnesota that his defense was for real.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, this year we got beat by Illinois, and then what happened? He goes back to the drawing board, prepares, shuts down Purdue, really puts a lid on Rutgers, and I fully expect him to have a great game plan against Indiana.
Well, let us move to the next level of the defense, which is still considered part of the front seven, or in the 3-3-5, I guess more part six or front six. Linebacking corner. This is where it gets a little gray area between linebackers and cornerbacks when you have the type of defense that Nebraska runs, and you have Isaac Gifford or John Bullock, who I would look at them more as linebackers. Maybe that's because I still look at Isaac in the same way that I looked at Luke Gifford a little bit. But did we didn't classify MJ Sherman as a defensive lineman, did we?
I did. As an edge.
Okay.
Kind of like a stand-up edge rusher type of guy, but yeah.
Well, I won't hate on it. But let's talk about that next level of defenders, guys. Who wants to go first, and who do you want to categorize as a linebacker?
Yeah, that's the hard part. Haas, do you want to go first? You want me to do it?
Sure, I'll go first. I don't consider Isaac Gifford a linebacker. Definitely more.
Neither do I.
John Bullock is definitely a linebacker. He almost is the Mike in this defense right now, especially with Javen Wright still recovering. MJ Sherman, I would say linebacker, just, more of a linebacker body. Like if there's ever any kind of murkiness on, okay, where do they kind of play on the field? It's like body types is where I'll differentiate them.
Right.
I have them at a B+. And I have them at a B+ because and it goes back to that Illinois game again. Those guys were missing run fits. Those guys didn't really know who to cover in the slot or how to cover in the slot. Did they need to fold back into the box against the RPO? Do they need to cover down on the screen? Do they carry the receiver vertically? So they really did struggle in that game. Maybe it's more of a credit to Illinois' offensive game plan. But I have them at a B+ just because you didn't see the disruption earlier in the year that you saw from guys like Luke Reimers last year. Reimers was great at flowing to the football and really racking up negative yardage plays, as a defensive player. I would really like to put this group at an A because I love the tenacity that they play with. I think that when you're looking at Mikhail Bayer and Bullock, Javen Wright, MJ Sherman, I love the way that these guys play football. They're not the defensive line's the tone setter, but these guys are flying around as well. And they've gotten better and better, as the games have gone on. So solid B+, would love to give them an A.
Well, Haas, as much as you would love to give them an A, I am giving them an A.
There you go. Same
reasons that you guys gave A's to the defensive line. I'm more of a linebacker type. Haas knows this, Gray. I think now. I really watch those linebackers, and for the same reason, 0 rushing touchdowns given up. Yeah, everyone on the defense, every all 11 guys have a part to play in that, but the second level, the linebackers, you're no matter how good the defensive front is, you're going to give up some rushing touchdowns if you don't have good great linebacking. And John Bullock, versatile, athletic. He's a plus defender in every aspect of the game, plays with great instincts, kind of like Reimers did last year, just great instinctual player. Vinny Shavers, true freshman, guy I think we should watch out for moving forward. Really athletic, also he looks the part out there. He reminds me a lot of Hausman. I know a lot of fans are making that comparison, but Hausman before he went to Michigan. Javen Wright hasn't played much, but when he has played, he's looked very good.
Yes.
In there. And my guy, Mikael Bear, sure, a little sloppy against Illinois, some missed run fits, didn't have his best game, which obviously he knows that as well. But he's an excellent defender, especially against the run, and he's very hostile and aggressive at the point of attack, which I like to see. So overall, excellent against the run, very good against the pass. Not great. Some tight ends and slot receivers will get away, but they're really good against the pass. They're doing their jobs very well. So linebackers, I will give an A to.
Okay.
I'm also going to give the linebackers an A, just a flat, straight, solid A. And while, yes, the linebacking, it's called linebacking core for a reason. But if you're looking at one player who can take it a B plus or an A minus and lift them, take a B plus and increase them a whole letter grade, you got John Bullock. I mean, we're talking about, leading the team in tackles. He's got an interception that he ran back for a touchdown. He's got a forced fumble. He's got 2 sacks. Got a couple pass breakups, a couple quarterback hits. And he, I know this is the different podcast, but he was a walk-on.
Mm-hmm.
That young man exemplifies 5 heart and putting, is it possible that maybe he is playing beyond, his, I don't want to say God-given abilities. I think that's
maximizing his abilities.
He's maximizing and not just his abilities, but his opportunities. And so, yeah, I'm high on that kid. I call him kid. He's, in his 20s, has a better beard than me. But yeah, he's the type of player that can elevate an entire position. So that's why I've got linebackers as an A.
John Bullock, to your point, Greg, he was kind of the first real-time feedback that we got that this defensive staff could develop guys.
Yeah.
Like, again, game 1 in 2023, he's making plays against Minnesota, made plays against Colorado. It's like, damn, like this guy's somebody that would have absolutely rotted on the bench under Frost, would have never seen the light of day.
Right.
Frost and Shenander. And then, he's making plays now. So, honestly, I don't want to put the cart before the horse because we're going to talk about standouts, but you could make a case that aside from the defensive line, he is the defensive MVP.
No, hold on. In the notes that you gave me or the format buzzword here on Corn Nation, you said that the standouts were supposed to be freshmen.
No.
Well,
I don't know.
We have standout and we have newcomer / freshman.
Greg, this is that reading comprehension, just like last week when you tried to say that I was concerned about Indiana via text.
I think it would be cool to pick a freshman standout for both offensive and defensive. What do you think? I like it, and standouts overall for both. Son of a bitch.
Hey, can we give some credit to whose idea this actually was?
It's all Jake's. That was the best part, Jake, is it was a screenshot that he was reading. So he really. I think it's important going forward to involve this guy in the planning of the show, maybe a little bit.
Number, Greg.
Yeah, I'll start a group
we
chat
can fix that. We can fix that. Let's not do it now. Let's.
You guys want to move on? Are you guys? So are you going to grade? Are we grading corners and safeties as separate positions? Because I did.
I just have secondary.
Okay, so I'll have to. Haas, what do you have? Do you have just?
I just have DBs. Just
okay.
Secondary.
I'm gonna have to kind of mesh mine then. Do you guys want me to start here since I'm already kind of okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, take it away.
So I'm gonna mesh them, but corners I have an A-, and safety / rover I have a B-. So I guess I'm gonna have to marry those two to a B.
Okay.
Corners, Tommy Hill playing excellent before the foot issue. Very physical, very good tackler for a corner, and a really good coverage guy, both zone and man. Sierra Wright stepped in and has looked like our best defensive player at times.
Thanks, Greg.
Don't know what that could be.
Excellent. He's a Sierra Wright, excellent, and also zone or man. Buford is kind of the odd one where he's played elite and also horrendously. To be nice about it, I think it's just breakdowns with consistency here with him. And I think, again, I can't speak for these guys, but physically he's obviously one of the more gifted athletes on the team. And he plays the position really, really well at times, but especially that second half against Rutgers was pretty ugly, but the first half was outstanding. Like, he had an A grade on half one and a D- half two. So, and then Hartzog, great tackler, definitely kind of gets targeted. Opponent offensive schemes target him a bit. He's a bit shaky in both man and zone coverage schemes. He's kind of late zone and man. He gets beat sometimes, but even he's playing pretty well. I'm not saying he's playing poorly, but, he does get targeted more. Safety, Isaac Gifford has not been the game changer that I expected, but he's been very solid and very good. Outside of Illinois and honestly the first half of Rutgers, especially the first drive, he was very undisciplined in his run fits, and he was just missing, honestly. But he's been solid. Singleton, very aggressive. He's the enforcer on D, hard hitter. Don't want to call him a headhunter because he's not Larry Asante. Another one of my favorite players ever, just unhinged, just football guy out there. But Singleton has been mostly inconsistent so far. So, again, to marry, the corners and the safeties just into the family of defensive backs, I guess I'll give a B. I'm going to go B+. I'll give them a B+ as a group, with most of the improvement, I think, being with the safety position. The corners definitely, I think, have been playing better in a vacuum this season.
Higher level,
yeah. So I guess overall, yeah, B+.
I have them at a B+ too. And some of the things that took away from their grades were, again, going to reference the Illinois game for this defense. Their communication issues and zone coverage against Illinois, that was kind of to their detriment. Missed run fits, whether it's from Isaac Gifford, Deshaun Singleton, because, as you said, Singleton's gotten better the past two games. So he played probably the worst game I've ever seen a Husker safety play against Illinois. So it's good to see him put that behind him and get better the past 2 weeks. Tommy Hill was playing elite football the first couple of games. That heel injury really is unfortunate because what he did against Colorado, especially baiting Shedeur Sanders into that throw, was phenomenal. Gifford, like you said, some missed run fits against Rutgers in that first half. I will say I think the staff kind of went back to the drawing board on how to best use Gifford. Earlier this year, he was very much more a safety aligned at 12 yards deep. Now they're starting to play him closer to the line of scrimmage like they did last year, where he had a lot of success in leading the team in tackles. And I believe he was honorable mention All Big Ten last year as the Rover.
That is correct.
Yes. And then you got Sierra Wright making an emergence. And Malcolm Hartzog at this point is, as you said, like he's a known quantity. He's going to struggle a little bit in zone coverage. He's going to struggle a little bit in man coverage. He's going to play really well against the run, actually. Like I never really have any concerns there with him.
Football guy.
All in all, I would say a B+. Take out that Illinois game, I would actually make a pretty strong case for giving him an A+.
Whew. There we go. A little bit of
Yep.
I think when you look at Malcolm Hartzog, he is 5th in the team in tackles. He has leads the team in interceptions. But I look, and I think we mentioned this last week. I look at the drop off, or dare I say, lack of drop off of productivity when Tommy Hill went out and Sierra Wright got brought in. Now, yeah, Sierra Wright is a transfer portal acquisition, but no drop off. In fact, maybe we speculated this last week, is there's a world where when Tommy comes back and is healed, you might have to find a new place for Malcolm Hartzog, because you got to kind of find a way to get your best guys on the field. Deshaun Singleton has been consistent, more so than Marquise, but I don't.
Totally
and
on that one. Oh, just realized totally forgot to touch on Marquise Buford.
Oh no, well, feel free to jump in, but I'm not. I wasn't looking. I guess, shame on me. I think he had another pass breakup in the second half against Rutgers on top of the interception. I didn't see a huge drop off after halftime for Marquise. I'll stay in and defend him a little bit. Not that there's, you guys aren't being overtly negative, but I have for this group, I just have a solid B. It's going to be real interesting to see when and they talked about this. I think Matt Rule talked about it today with Tommy Hill with this plantar fasciitis burst or, something like that, like how it's supposed to relieve pressure. It sucks that it happened, but it could make, his recovery better or quicker. Be interesting to see what happens if they found a way to get him and Sierra Wright on the field at the same time. Like I said, I like Isaac Gifford. Maybe that's why I conflate Isaac Gifford and kind of look at him more as a linebacker, especially in the last few games. He's been playing up a little bit closer, and like we talked about, he's second on the team in tackles, and I think second on the team, or he's in there as far as he's got plenty of tackles for loss as well. So I don't necessarily see him as a safety style, but that's just my perception, and I didn't play football, so what the hell do I know? But as again, overall for the defensive back unit, I have them as a B. So,
Marquise, just to touch on the Marquise Buford thing, I agree with Jake. First half played lights out. Second half kind of fell off a little bit. I think he kind of got inside his own head a little bit. He got beat deep a couple of times. He gave up that 3rd and 42, or not 3rd and 42, the third down for the 42-yard completion. And then that Rutgers receiver was pushing off, and a few times he lost his feet, and it ended up with Marquise Buford getting called for defensive pass interference. So I think he just started playing tentatively, not really knowing how the refs were going to call things, and so just being in his own head. But still kind of waiting for him to make the jump to look like he did as a freshman in 22 before he tore his ACL, because man, he was a thumper as a freshman, especially, when Bill Bush was coordinating the defense, coming down and to run support the line of scrimmage. So I think he's probably one of the better athletes on the entire team, but just got to put it all together.
Yep. Consistency.
And then I love the idea of Sierra Wright as the slot defender, once Tommy Hill's healthy. I mean, Malcolm Hartzog, if you notice, teams do like to use bigger slots against Hartzog just for the mismatch with him. If we had Sierra Wright being able to cover, doesn't matter if they want to use a big slot, a shorter, shiftier guy, line up a tight end there. I think Sierra Wright could definitely, really bolster that spot in this defense.
You know what, Haas? I may be wrong here, but I'd like to see Buford in that spot. And have
I think Buford would be a great
have Sierra and Tommy as boundary and other and opposite
boundary and field.
Boundary and field, and then have Marquise, the most physically impressive probably of the group. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just like I think that might be an interesting in there.
I hadn't even thought of that, and when you bring that up, though, it's like he's such a sure tackler that he would probably be better suited to that, because a lot of times teams are going to run right at that slot defender, funnel the run right to them and force them to make a play in the run game.
Guys, we're really lucky. It seems like everybody on our team, on our defense, is a sure tackler right now. All right. Do we want to do offense and defense grades as a whole, and then the standouts and newcomers?
Yeah.
Or do we want to go to or do we want to do special teams grades first?
I have special teams at a D-.
Okay. Well, Husk.
Only reason it's not an F. The only reason it's not an F is because we have been able to put the ball through the uprights on touchdown.
All right, Greg, I guess we're just going to roll into special teams real quick.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I had him next on my list. You said D-, Hoss?
Yeah.
I got to try to aggregate these scores all up, and D- really throws off because I was going to do A+ is 10 points and work my way down, and D- is like -2 points or something.
All right.
If we're giving the GPA, the cumulative on this one, this one's nuking it.
Well, I think this is going to be quick. So I also have special teams as a whole at D-, but I actually broke down kicker, kicking team, kickoff team, punter, and punting team. So they actually all got their own grades. I'm just going to roll through them real quick because I don't want to go long. Kicker, D. I don't feel good about any. And again, I'm not trashing the guys.
No.
This is just how I feel. Kicker, I don't care who's out there attempting a field goal. I don't feel good about it right now. I don't care if it's a 20-yarder. Kicking team, F. 5 blocked field goals. We're the worst in FBS. We are 133rd out of 133 teams. And that includes long snapping issues as well. Kickoff team, I gave a C-. Kickers aren't kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. I think that's because Rule maybe doesn't want them to. He wants balls to be playable, so I'm just speculating. I don't know, but maybe they're instructed to kick the ball short, so there has to be a play there. I know Rule mentioned before that he likes, kickoffs and kick returns, in college football. The coverage hasn't been great, but we haven't allowed a touchdown, so there's that. Punter, A. Yeah, Brian Buschini, the lone bright spot.
Yep. On
special teams. He actually may be the best player at his position on our team. And I think that that guy plays the position incredibly well, especially when you consider the amount of pressure he's under when he's launching these 50-yard nukes down the field. Also making tackles and getting an honor. He got a black shirt. I mean, the guy's a football player. Probably my favorite player on the team right now. Big Buschini guy. Punting team, F. We've had 3 blocked punts this year, which is also the worst in FBS. So that's why, as a whole, we're a D-. The only reason we're not an F is because Brian Buschini is a badass, and I really like him as the lone special teams player. Other than that, it's been catastrophic.
That's pretty much it for me. When I wrote this down earlier, I was like, you know what? If it weren't for Buschini bailing us out against Rutgers, this would be F.
I mean, eight total block kicks. Return game is non-existent. Whatever. I guess I'm gonna do standouts for special teams right now. Standout, Brian Buschini.
Yep.
Newcomer, there isn't one. Hopefully, our next special teams coordinator. Again, Ed. Hey man, I'll grab a beer with you. We can talk football. You seem like a really good guy, and I think you're a good person. You may not be, but I perceive you as one. Someone has to be held accountable for what is happening, and this is just horrendous. 8 block kicks through 6 games. That's all I have to say about that. Well, I said a lot about that, but I'm going to end it right there.
Yep. Yeah, at that point, it's an aside from Buschini's punting performance, it's an abject failure across the board.
It's a catastrophe. It's disastrous, catastrophic, whatever, apocalyptic. I can go on and on. I got a lot of words. Let's break out the thesaurus, boys. I mean, there's a lot of words we can use.
And when you see, you got starters on the special teams units.
Yeah.
You're not trotting out walk-ons from Ainsworth and Halsey and Thedford. I mean, you're trotting out your first and second string guys to make a difference and flip the field in the special teams game. And these guys, a lot of whom have played a lot of football over their careers, are making mistakes that should not be made. Like what Rule said about Isaac Gifford was the one that gave up the block, one of the blocks against Rutgers. And it's like, smart football player, he should be instructed to say, hey, you step inside first in all kicking situations. You cut off the shortest route to the kicker to prevent blocks. So I'm not saying like Rule's full of shit. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just like it's really indicative of special teams just being more of an institutional failure right now.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm not happy with special teams, but that bright spot that is in the special teams, it shines a little brighter for me. You guys went D-. I think Brian Buschini is so integral to where we are right now. And Jake, you kind of touched on this, probably the best player at his position on our team. I got a full letter grade better. I got the special teams as a C- because of Boom Buschini.
Yep. Which is a fair take.
Yep.
I think that's I'm not gonna. There's no pushback there. I'm gonna stick with mine. Greg,
no doubt.
E-, but I can see that. And I think justifiably, just on the star power, I'm not using that term lightly.
No, right.
Our punter, I think that it's fair enough. You can get up into that C- range.
I mean, just the new guy, he got bent in half.
Yeah.
On I believe the first punt of the Rutgers game, and got up, finished out the game punting, threw a completion that kept the drive alive, and had some, to borrow one of your words, I'm going to use it more frequently, some serious nukes. Flipping the field, and was integral in holding off the Scarlet Knights for the win.
Yeah, even that throw he had.
Yeah.
He looked good doing it.
Hell of a throw too.
I mean, there's no, he got the ball in his hands. A lot of, you see these like fake field goals and the kicker looks nervous, swaggy with it, man. Just had
a little bit of a rollout too.
And Jalen Lloyd, I bet he had a really fun film session, not be able to make one guy miss with that lazy attempt he had.
He should have scored on that play.
He should have scored on that one. A guy with that ability. So I'm sure he probably got ripped up by his boys after you see that.
I'm holding steady at the D-.
So yeah.
Oh, I'm not here to change hearts or minds.
I love the compelling arguments about Buschini's performance, bringing it up to a C. I'm holding steady, but between long snapping, between field goal kicking, punt, the punt coverage, the punt returns, we're going to give up a big kickoff return for a touchdown at some point this year. It's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time.
I just can't, I can't move past, that D. So, but Buschini, you know what? You can always drink for free in the state of Nebraska after last week.
Let me ask you this question, Haas. I'm going to ask you because you have the mind. How many fake punts, passes did Darren Erstad have in his career? Any idea?
I don't know. It's 4, man.
Okay. Yeah. But you're such a student of the game. I thought you'd gone back and.
You know what? We just don't run fake punts often at Nebraska in general.
Right. Yeah. Or fake field goals.
I'm trying to think. I can think of a few failed fake punts that we ran under Pelini. Alex Henry had that great fake punt against Oklahoma State on our first drive in 2010. He picked up like 30-some yards.
Yeah.
But other than that, we ran one against Maryland last year on our first drive. I remember that. But other than that, we really don't do a lot of fake field goals or fake punts at Nebraska, which I love a good fake field goal. So maybe, that might be the better route instead of trying to kick one.
Hey, speaking of that, we sniffed out a fake field goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun too.
Played by Hartzog.
Darren Erstad was the number 1 overall pick in the MLB draft.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it turned out pretty well for him. He won. Ho said he won a Super Bowl. He won a World Series with the Angels. So
he was in the major leagues for a long. Like I don't know. I think the guy had like a 15-year career plus or something. He was good.
Career.
Yeah, nobody's arguing about Darren Erstad's
kind of a forgotten great Nebraska athlete. Haas and I talk about this all the time. Like, where does Alex Gordon fit in? Where do some of these guys fit in? Not what the show is about, so we're not going to talk about that.
That's a good off-season content right there.
Kind of an under-the-radar great athlete out of the state of Nebraska. Anyway.
Jamestown, North Dakota.
Oh, is he from North Dakota? I thought he was from small town.
He's North Dakota guy.
Yeah, he looks like one. His lips are permanently chapped from all that dry air up there.
Yeah, all that wind, all that Canadian wind.
All that Canadian wind, man. It's like his skin gets weathered. It's dry. It never rains. It's just windy and cold.
Yeah, nothing to stop the wind from the Arctic Circle down to Mexico.
Yeah.
So next on my list, I know we talked about offensive freshmen and standouts and defense. You know, I have actually overall coaching.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't do one for overall coaching. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have a grade for it. I'm going to be honest, I ran out of time.
Same.
I mean, that's fine.
To prep. I don't know, Haas, you have a better probably finger on the pulse for this stuff than I do. You're a lot more akin to a coaching mind than myself. So do you want to just shoot from the hip here? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll give the old college try and shoot from the hip here. Defensively, I'm going to go – I mean, when you're halfway through the season, you haven't given up a single rushing touchdown. You're doing something right as a defensive coordinator. I'm going to go A+ for the defensive side of the ball, for the defensive staff. Offensively, youth, injuries, a little bit of inexperience, a little bit of change in scheme, freshman quarterback. Been a little critical on Sat on more than one occasion, with his play calling. I'm going to be a little generous here and give it a B- on the offensive side of the ball, because I do think that the offensive line, God, that's tough to try to rationalize a B- for the offensive staff. I'm going to say B- only because of Dylan Raiola and the offensive line really maximizing what they have. Receivers not being consistent enough in the running back room, what we talked about earlier. That's more in the C territory. So I'll go B- there. Overall for Rule, I'll go B+. Go bag a big win on the road this weekend. I'll bump that up.
Okay. I'll start from the top and work my way down. Matt Rule, because I have to include the improvement from last year. Mm-hmm. I'm giving him an A-. I think he's been very good recruiting, transfer portal acquisitions, and everything like that. We've already matched our win total from last year. The biggest issue being turnovers. Those have been largely cleaned up. Sat, again, this is just coaching. This has nothing to do with the players, the position groups, or anything. To me, this is just coaching. B-, I guess. I'd like to see some more actual play calls and schemes going downfield where your primary target, not your third option, is a downfield guy. Mm-hmm. And getting some of the more dynamic, explosive playmakers the ball. Tony White and company on D, and again, I'm including the position coaches in this. Again, just like on offense, I kind of include, Donnie Raiola, I'll give an A- too, but we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole because we're already an hour and a half in. So defense, I'll give an A. It would be an A+. Illinois, I don't know if we did the greatest job with in-game adjustments there. So it's holding back from the A+ grade for me, but it's an A. Like Haas said, 0 rushing touchdowns allowed through 6 games. That's a pretty good stat line to have. 11 points per game, 20 sacks, et cetera, et cetera. A bona fide A. If we would have made a field goal against Illinois and eliminated the rest of that overtime in the other adjustments, it would have been an A+.
What did you say, Jake, for Matt Rule?
Matt Rule, I gave an A-.
Okay.
That
A- to him.
I loved what you mentioned about the rationale why you're giving Matt Rule an A-, because I think as Husker fans, so often we've hired coaches, we get through year one, it's almost like politicians on the campaign circuit. They start saying what they're going to fix in year two, and the fix never comes. It falls flat on its face. But Rule talked about going back to when he talked to Joel Klatt over the summer, -17 to +7. Well, we did it.
Yep.
Penalties still, I'm not going to get into that because Big Ten officiating, you never know what you're going to get,
And, yeah, Haas, the games that we've had a lot of penalties, man. The other teams have too. It's just been penalties.
The timing of them. The timing of them have been really bad, really poor. And the consistency between crews, I think, is what drives me nuts the most in the conference. If they just had an idea of what a penalty was, a specific kind of penalty, what's their criteria, okay, fine. I can live with that. But it just differs so much crew to crew, on a weekly basis. But Rule's delivered on the promises that he's talked about on how we're going to improve. And so, I've met a B+, but A-, I love that one too, because, the dude has followed through on how he said he's going to rebuild Nebraska football. I mean, from day one, the day that he was hired in his press conference, he said that his teams win by doing 4 things: run the football, stop the run, protect the passer, and affect the passer. And we do all those things. This year, the running game's kind of taken a back seat because we have a generational talent at quarterback, but we still at our core want to run the football. We're trying to be successful at it. But Matt Rule is a coach that lives by the maxims that he believes in to win football games. That's a lot different than some of the crap that we've seen come through here.
I'm going to blow your guys' mind because you talked about penalties. You talk, Jake, I think you just said, both teams are Nebraska and our opponents are being penalized. It just seems it's exceptionally timely for Nebraska's. Nebraska has been penalized or flags thrown on Nebraska 47 times for 404 yards. Through 6 games, Nebraska's opponents have been penalized 47 times for 488 yards.
Yeah, get on.
But again, it doesn't seem like that when we're in the heat of battle and we get an untimely whatever it may be, and especially one where we go back and we watch the replay like, no, that's a bullshit call.
Well, my favorite one, the pass interference, is the first time it's ever happened in the history of the game that I know of that the player wasn't even touched.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no contact made in a pass interference. It's insane. We're not going to revisit that, but that's insane. Like that's why I feel like as Husker fans, we feel like we've been penalized so much more.
It takes away plays, big moments.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
On the other side of it, Pat Bryant against from Illinois, he's fully extended on our DB, pushing off, to gain separation, and it's nothing.
No flag.
But
Exactly.
Anytime we want to try to run just maybe a little bit of a pick play on that shallow screen to Barney, it's officiating crews are watching for that every week. Right. So the second they see it, it's a flag's coming out. It's almost just instinctual for them just to throw the flag immediately.
And I recall, I want to say it was the Rutgers game that I went hit play or hit pause or something. I know what it was. I got up and I hit pause because I DVR'd it and watched it the next day. And at the moment that I hit pause was we were going down the home sideline, the Nebraska sideline. So we were going towards the south end zone. It took me a minute. And our receiver is getting his jersey pulled. Pulled and no flag. I'm like, come on, guys. That's So anyway, for my coaching grades, I'm going to be in that A- B+ range, but it's going to be carried by Tony White and Matt Rule. I'm not anti-Marcus Satterfield. I just feel like at some point things have to be, I think, Haas, I'll borrow one of your words, more creative. We have to we have to get more creative in the run game. Again, it's all rehashed. It's all things that people who've been listening to Overreaction for weeks and weeks know. But at the same time, just as I couldn't fault Jalen Lloyd for his 6 catches for 180 yards because he's not on the field, all the time, or I can't fault the overall lack of production, how we don't have the emergence of a star running back because it's still running back by committee. I can't fault the players for that, but I can fault the coaching. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually going to go because of that explanation on the lower side. So I'm going to go B+ for coaching. If there were some subtle, and we don't need a sweeping overhaul, but if there were some subtle changes, then that could easily be raised into the A range. So that as we move on, we're an hour 45 in. Let's knock out some. I think we've talked about all the personnel, so we don't have to necessarily do a lot of rehashing. But let's talk about an offensive and defensive standout, and then a newcomer. Now I have it as freshman, but if we want to do just newcomer, new to Nebraska, we can do that as well. So, Jake, let's start with you. Let's do who do you have for an offensive standout?
I have a quarterback, Dylan Raiola. Mm-hmm. Just taking care of the ball the way he has. That's what the biggest improvement we needed, year over year. I think he's met / exceeded expectations for coming in and doing what he's done. So, yeah, Dylan Raiola is my offensive standout. I really don't think I need much of an explanation. I don't think I'll get a ton of pushback from most people on that choice.
I have the same one, Dylan Raiola. I mean, it's the natural one.
See, I think this is where it gets. I don't want to say you could almost invert the offensive standout and maybe the freshman standout or newcomer, because when I didn't read the full context, I just thought we were talking about like freshman standouts. I was thinking Ja'Cory Barney.
That's who I have as
my yes, that's who I have as my newcomer. Probably the most explosive player on the offense to this point. He's got a bright future, dynamic in the rushing game and the pass catching game.
I mean, realistically, because my 2 players are those 2 players, just to be a little contrarian, I'm going to have my freshman standout being Dylan and my newcomer, and my offensive standout be Ja'Cory, just to mix it up a little bit. Because I have to. And then, Haas, will have you start on the defensive side. Who do you have as your defensive standout so far?
All right, defensive standout so far. It's no secret if you listen to the show. John Bullock, big John Bullock guy. My freshman newcomer standout, Sierra Wright.
Jake?
John Bullock, standout. Could have picked Nash, could have picked Ty, could have picked, honestly, made a good.
I almost went with James Williams for a minute.
Could have made a good argument for James Williams based on the strength of just one game. He was that good. John Bullock, obviously tried and true, steady player.
Yep.
I did go with a freshman here. I went with Vinny Shavers. I've been very impressed with him. No tentativeness. The moment does not seem too big. When you see him come into the game, he looks every bit the part, knows what he's doing.
I agree.
And he's violent and aggressive at the point of attack. There's no timidness. Big Vinny Shavers guy. And I think Willis McGahee IV is another guy that we're going to see a lot of in the future. Honorable mention, newcomer as well.
I really want to have Bullock as my standout, and this is, no slight to him. You look at the numbers; they speak for himself. But I have to go Ty Robinson. 14 total tackles, 4 sacks for 31 yards. He's also got a couple pass breakups, a few quarterback hits, the safety. So I'm going with Ty. And again, that is as much for on the field production as just the decision to come back. The announcement that he made before the Iowa game is like, no, I'm coming back because this is something special that's being built here in Lincoln. And his on the field performance has not indicated that, like he's not taking a step back. He's not coasting, not that he would after an announcement like that or the reason that he came back. So I'm going with Ty. And then my newcomer, I'd have to go Sierra Wright. And we talked about that. There's no letdown. There's no drop off, I should say, from Tommy Hill to Sierra. And it's great to see. And like I said, if when Tommy Hill gets himself, I can say get himself right. Like that sounds like a mental issue, but when he's healed and he's ready to go and he's 100%, then if they can find a way to get those two guys on the field with a Deshaun Singleton, with Marquise Buford, whatever that would look like, I'd be very interested in seeing, which one of those guys would potentially step into that slot. So I'd go Sierra. So again, I can't agree with you guys all the time. I have to mix it up a little bit. So, I mean, that's the midseason report card, guys. What do you think?
I think we hit all the main points.
I don't think there's anything else to do. We have
unturned.
I'm sorry?
No stone left unturned.
No. The only thing we have left to do is, I guess we gave Indiana scores last week, so we don't have to do that anymore. Do we want to revisit that? Do we need a reminder or see if there are any changes or amendments that need to be made?
Yeah, can we?
21-9.
Haas, you said 21-9 Nebraska. Jake, you kept with your original preseason score of 27-13.
Whew, that's going to be, considering Indiana went all the way up to like 7-point favorites, that'll be a pretty big lopsided victory. I'm going to stick with it just because I don't want to be wrong if it does come in. So,
yeah, I'm going to stick with mine too.
And I went 35-20.
Yeah.
So,
but
again,
hopefully we are celebrating a big win on Saturday.
Yep.
It is a known fact that I'm just a little crazy. So,
hey.
Gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. So, any final thoughts? We go around the horn. Haas, we'll start with you.
Find a way to win. Find a way. Got to get the monkey off our back.
Jake?
Yeah, you take the temperature of college football as a whole right now. Doesn't matter how much you win by. Just go find a way to win. Nobody cares anymore. Matt Rule, I think I don't know if it was in today's presser or not. I know I heard him say, it doesn't matter what that logo on the helmet is anymore. Anybody can beat you anytime. So these negative Husker fans that are mopey after Rutgers, Wisconsin, doing what they did to Rutgers and whatever with Purdue. And I think that it's a natural thing. I fall victim to it, but let's stay positive. We're 5-1, boys. I mean, we still got half a season to go, and I feel good about the season moving forward.
I too. I think that, as I said earlier, this team hasn't played its most complete game yet. I still think that's to come. And so I still think that there's some big moments out there yet for us this season. I think that if we can get one, especially this week, what that would mean of beating a ranked team on the road, getting your 6th win of the season. And I think it's going to be good to go into a little bit of a hostile environment a week before going to the Horseshoe. I think that, you go back to back in hostile environments with loud crowds, you're kind of conditioned to it by the time you get done with that first game. So I think that everything's there for the taking. And I think that it's kind of weird. It's been a little, maybe granted it's only Monday of game week, but I feel like it's been a little quiet around Nebraska about this. It's like, this is a fucking huge game. I added that, F-bomb in there for emphasis. Like, I think this is bigger than Colorado, in my opinion.
It is.
What it means to this season. Colorado was a good old-fashioned grudge match.
Yeah.
This means something.
I agree.
And I love what you said, Haas, about, for lack of a better term, going to Bloomington is a bit of a tune-up, for going to Columbus, because by the time you get to the Horseshoe, you're going to be calloused to all the environmental stuff. You're going to be ready to just go out there and focus on what you need to do. The benefit of having the transmitter in the helmets and things like that's gonna, I think, you make it a little easier because I mean, let's face it, Purdue is not a hostile environment.
I want to talk about, to piggyback off what you just said about, you know, the transmitter and the helmet. People always talk about defense playing well at home because you got the home crowd behind you and it's loud. That does present communication issues when you're playing at home. You know, you're on defense because your home crowd's loud when you're trying to communicate. Now we have the opportunity to take the most portable thing in football. There's three portable things: running game, defense, special teams. Well, we've got the defense that's portable to take on the road with us. Now they're going to be able to set up and play in quiet environments where they're going to be able to make their checks. Nothing's going to be misunderstood because the home crowd's going to be quiet. And I think that anybody who's been to some big Husker games in the past 10, 15 years where we've, you know, gotten our ass kicked, you know, and the opposing team's defense has really shut us down, there is nothing more demoralizing to a fan, a home fan in the stands, than watching the away team's defense dominate the game because it's quiet, nobody's excited,
right?
And it takes the air out of that stadium. Nebraska's got to start fast on Saturday. They need to get a couple of quick 3-and-outs, maybe get some good field position for the offense, and they need to psychologically take Indiana out of this game.
It's going to start with those opening drives. You know, if Nebraska wins the toss and they defer, can that defense come out and do exactly that, take all the air out of the stadium? If Nebraska starts out an offense, can they go down the field and can they set the tone? So it's going to be an interesting one. And this is, I believe, it's a big noon kickoff, correct?
Yeah, at God's kickoff time, 11 a.m.
Kegs and eggs and Husker football. So make sure that we've got more content coming up. As we move on, I'll be honest with you. I think I said at the beginning of the show that this episode was going to drop on Wednesday. I'm going to go ahead and let it go. Let it fly about 4:00 Tuesday. If you're a member, you're already getting it early. But we've got Andy Ketterson's Husker Happy Hour later tonight on Tuesday, and then we've got John, who is still recovering from his preventative maintenance, we'll say, that we'll be doing Monday Night Therapy on Wednesday this week live. And then I'll be back with Mini Hunt on Thursday for the 5 Heart podcast. And then you get one night off, one night of peace before Nebraska football. So that'll do it for this mid-season report card for our beloved Nebraska Cornhuskers. For every game, Jake Haas-Reuter, I'm Greg Mahochko, reminding you each and every week to go big red. Haas.
Find a way.
Jake.
Hey, doesn't matter by how many, just find a way to echo what Haas said and throw the bones, baby.